All right, Kamala Harris interview with Stephanie Ruhle, I believe it's pronounced, of MSNBC. She was just on Stephanie Bill Maher last weekend, essentially saying Kamala doesn't need to do interviews or whatever. Pretty dismissive towards the idea of Kamala even doing these. So I don't know if that was reverse psychology or what, but Kamala's on now. Let's see what happens.
But still, there are lots of Americans who don't see themselves in your plans. For those who say these policies aren't for me, what do you say to them?
Well, if you are hardworking, if you have the dreams and the ambition.
Kind of an open-ended question, but she just answered the question, like,
And the aspirations of what I believe you do, you're in my plan. You know, I have to tell you, I really love and am so energized by what I know to be the spirit and character of the American people. We have ambition. We have aspirations. We have.
I'm going to try to be fair. I'm not going to try to be biased in this interview. I don't know how you can watch this as an undecided voter and just think this is a good answer. Like, this is pretty much your entire life. I mean, not necessarily, you shouldn't rely on one politician, but this issue is the probably most important thing in your life, unless you have just like a very negative circumstance going on, which obviously that's brutal. But like, for the majority of people, economy, buying a home, what your day-to-day life is in terms of your finances, that dictates so much. And for the politician who's running for president to just be so vague right off the bat, you must be watching that going, ugh. Like those two people at the Oprah town hall that asked the question about home affordability to Kamala just got a gobbledygook.
Dreams. We can see what's possible. We have an incredible work ethic, but not.
It's so vague. It's just like, believe in yourself.
Everyone has the access to the opportunities that allow them to achieve those things. But we don't lack for those things. But not everyone, you know, gets handed stuff on a silver platter. And so my vision for the economy, I call it an opportunity economy, is about making sure.
In my opinion, that's a red flag concept. Just call it the economy. You put a adjective or whatever, a word in front of that. And I think that's a little suspect. Just call it the economy. Don't try to make it sound different.
That all Americans, wherever they start, wherever they are, have the ability to actually achieve those dreams and those ambitions, which include, for middle-class families, just being able to know that they're.
And by the way, I don't know, like, of all the three candidates, Kamala, Trump, and RFK, the only one who really talks about this, the big problem in the American economy is not the total number. The total GDP in America is still doing pretty well. Well, like, it's not doing as good as it was maybe back like in the 90s, 80s, when it was like 3-4% GDP per year. Look at the stock market. Look at just the total GDP of the country. The people who own these big companies are doing great. And that's the problem RFK talks about. The economy is great in America, great for like the top 5-10% of people. And for like the majority, for the middle class, it's not great. That's the big problem. There's all this dancing around the issue. I don't know if people want to admit that, but that's just statistically clearly true. And you don't even need to do that much research on that. You could find that. You'll just bump into that very quickly if you look into any of the economic data on USA. And that's like a problem, not just USA, but it's certainly in USA.
Their hard work allows them to get ahead, right? I think we can't and we shouldn't aspire to have an economy that just allows people to get by. People want to do more than just get by. They want to get ahead. And I come from the middle class. Look, my mother raised my sister.
Again, I'm not trying to be unbiased. This is so far not a good answer.
She worked hard. She saved up. By the time I was a teenager, she was able to buy our first home. And, you know, home ownership for too many people in our country now is elusive. You know, gone is the day of everyone thinking they could actually live the American dream. So part of my vision for the economy is let's deal with some of the everyday challenges that people face and address them with common sense solutions, such as affordable housing.
And then smiles.
Over the last 4 years, there have been tremendous economic.
No answer there, really. just a platitude soup.
Wins. And you've just laid out a big plan, but still,
housing.
over the last 4 years, there have been tremendous economic wins. And you've just laid out a big plan.
How is how has there been economic wins? The only wins are if you're in the stock market. And the stock market's so heavily dominated by wealthy people. The top 10% of the stock market is owned by, 93% of the stock market is owned by the top 10% of Americans. So yes, if you have a little bit of stocks and you're like in that bottom 90% of Americans, when the stock market goes up, you do better, but maybe your retirement account went from 50,000 to 57,000. That's good, but if you get into the upper echelons of wealth, those little percentage gains in the stock market, like if it goes up 10% in 1 year, you're getting a humongous boost in your money, and that's literally the only wins. The stock market's hot. That's it. The inflation, not a win. Housing costs, not a win. You could go to like grocery prices, certainly not a win. I mean, that would be encompassing inflation, and then just like there hasn't been this massive job boom. A lot of the jobs, the bounce back jobs, a lot of the jobs that have been created, a ton of them were just recovery jobs from COVID. There hasn't been this humongous economic boom. There's just been a very, very good stock market. And the tech, like if you're a software engineer, and even they're starting to get squeezed because lots of jobs are going to AI. So basically people that own equity have done well.
But still, polling shows that most likely voters still think Donald Trump is better to handle the economy. Why do you think that is?
That's so painful for her to say. Do you see her face? She's like, I think that's logical. Just he's not the incumbent right now, and it's certainly logical. He's not the incumbent right now, and when he was in, median workers actually did. It's not good enough yet, but they did start to see a slight increase. That basically since 1980, the median wages, like real median wages, were flat. They had a little bit of an increase under Trump, which is like, again, that's a good bucking of the trend. I said bucking, by the way, YouTube, but yeah. So, and then there's no inflation. So just on that alone, the fact that so many more people could afford the American dream for a house, clearly Donald Trump, by the way, has a better economic record.
Well, here's what I know in terms of the facts. Donald Trump left us with the worst economy since the Great Depression. When you look,
so I saw this clip. I think Stephanie actually calls her out on this, which is good. I give her props. If you're going to bring this up, you got to immediately follow it up with some version of, we would have also locked the economy down, but here's how we would have done things differently or something, because everybody knows that if Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton was the president when COVID struck, they also would have done lockdowns. They also would have done social distancing. They also would have done quarantines. That just cost jobs. There's no way around that. There's absolutely 0% chance there wouldn't have been a humongous economic shock to many workers during COVID. So I don't know. I think it's not fair to say that just all happened.
look at, for example, the employment numbers.
It was during COVID, and employment was so high because we shut down the government, we shut down the country.
Even before the pandemic, he lost manufacturing jobs by most people's estimates, at least 200,000. He lost manufacturing plants.
That could be a little true. Like, if you're Kamala Harris, you're going to argue this because it's a good talking point. And some of middle America who was sold on Trump's like, oh, I'm a tariff, we're going to bring all these factories back, we're going to bring all these union jobs back. But it's still, like, again, they had a median wage bump, a lot of workers. You could probably find pockets where it didn't happen like they wanted it to. But, I mean, by and large, the economy was better for most people under Trump.
Auto workers, how he lost auto plants. We have grown over 20 new auto plants. He has an agenda.
But at least for Kamala, I will give her props. This is better than the answer she gave at the beginning. Like, she's giving real answers here, not just opportunity economy and we need to be affordable, or like, I don't know, we need to work hard, we have ambition, blah, blah, blah.
Let's just deal with right now going forward, not to mention what happened in the past. He has an agenda that would include making it more difficult for workers to earn overtime, an agenda that would include cutting off access to small business loans for small businesses, an agenda that includes tariffs to the point that the average working person will spend 20% more on everyday necessities, and an estimated...
I would like more detail on the overtime comment. I don't really know where she's getting that from, because to take her side, when Donald Trump's in one of these interviews, he doesn't give a lot of detail either. I think of the four, Trump, JD Vance, Kamala, Tim Walz, JD Vance is the best at laying out an economic argument. He could actually like refute the other person's policies in real time quickly and articulately. Trump just is pretty vague as well. Like he's confident and he hits like the key points sometimes pretty well, but Kamala's doing okay here. I just would like more specifics.
$4,000 more a year on those everyday necessities, to the point that top economists in our country...
See, like, this is not a good answer. You should be able to explain what you just said, why that's true. Why is tariffs will raise prices for sure? You just, because top economists say this, I just don't, that argument does not matter to me, because there's going to be 3 more economists over here that disagree. Economists are not a monolith. And Goldman Sachs, I just saw, I did see on X, and I didn't like read the article, but I just saw this like a few minutes ago, that they refuted some of her claims that she made at the debate, like, oh, Goldman Sachs agrees with me or whatever.
From Nobel laureates.
Don't quote me, like, I gotta double check that. I did see that. But still the point, like, Nobel laureates. So I'm sure there's a ton who disagree too.
To people.
This is just obviously a cop-out answer. Experts agree with me. That to me is not acceptable, to be honest, for future president.
At Moody's and Goldman Sachs have compared my plan.
Moody's, mortgage-backed securities,
with his, and said my plan would grow the economy, his would shrink the economy. Some of them have actually assessed that his plan would increase inflation and invite a recession by the middle of next year.
So this is a nothing. She started the question out pretty good, but I would just roll my eyes, and I don't know how people watch that and go, "Oh, they said that." Nice. Like, just ask them then. We're asking you.
So the facts remain that Donald Trump has a history of taking care of very rich people. And I'm not mad at anybody for being rich, but they should pay their fair share. But tax cuts for the billionaires and the top corporations in our country, and then not really paying much attention to middle-class families. My perspective on the economy is when you grow the middle class...
How, though? Just like say how he did that.
America's economy is stronger. And there's empirical evidence to prove my point correct.
Then let me ask you about...
Tell us what it is. Don't just say this person from Goldman Sachs agrees with me.
Taxes, because lots of people will say, I don't like Donald Trump, but he cut my taxes. He didn't just cut corporate taxes, he cut individual taxes. Now, that expires next year, and there's some people confused saying, I don't know what's going to happen next year. Under a Harris administration, at what income level should someone expect their taxes to go up? And that state and local tax deduction that's currently capped and matters to a lot of people in blue states, are you going to lift that cap?
So, first of all, when it relates to anybody making less than $400,000 a year, your taxes will not go up. Your taxes will not go up. And in fact, under my plan, taxes for 100 million Americans will actually be cut, including $6,000 a year for young couples for the first year of their child's life in a tax cut, a tax credit, essentially.
So far, this is a good answer.
By expansion of the child tax credit. And why is that? Because during the first year of a young couple, of a person's child's life, they're going to need help buying a crib, buying a car seat. And we all benefit when they're actually able to do what they naturally want to do to take care of their child.
And expanding that child tax credit, or you mentioned housing before, giving that extra money for a first home, If you can't raise corporate taxes, or if GOP takes control of the Senate, where do you get the money to do that? Do you still go forward with those plans and borrow?
Well, but we're going to have to raise corporate taxes, and we're going to have to make sure that the biggest corporations.
And I think this is a good answer as well from Kamala, because it proves that she really took in the question, didn't really agree with the premise, and is now giving her take. And even if her take is perhaps not popular to everybody, I think this is a good answer. And she's just kind of owning what she thinks.
And billionaires pay their fair share. That's just it. It's about paying their fair share. I am not mad at anyone for achieving success, but everyone should pay their fair share. And it is not right that the teachers and the firefighters that I meet every day across our country are paying a higher tax than the richest people in our country.
Bill Gates just said it this week. If he was in charge of taxes, he would have paid more. But how do you find that line to make sure corporations are paying their fair share, but they're not leaving our country?
Well, listen, I work with a lot of
That's a good follow-up question. And yeah, so this last couple minutes, this has been good for the reporter and Kamala, I think.
CEOs. I have spent a lot of time with CEOs, and I'm going to tell you that the business leaders who are actually part of the engine of America's economy agree that people should pay their fair share. They also agree that when we look at a plan such as mine that is about investing in the middle class, investing in new industries, investing in bringing down costs, invest in entrepreneurs like small businesses, that the overall economy is stronger and everyone benefits. Part of my plan for the economy is investing in new industries in a way that we have active partnership with the private sector. I've worked with the private sector my entire career. Even as vice president, working with some of the biggest banks and biggest tech companies to increase by billions of dollars the money going into community banks to increase access to capital for small businesses. Why do those biggest corporations and CEOs do that? Because they know those kinds of investments, like in our small businesses, in startups.
So she's doing pretty good here. Even this might be a rehearsed thing, but it sounds a lot more natural than it did at the beginning of the interview, where it literally looked like she was just kind of searching for the sound bites in her head. At least it sounds like she's off the top of her head right now. It's not that specific heavy, but it's not bad.
And entrepreneurs actually strengthens America's economy overall, and everyone benefits. So this is not about bilking anybody, but it is certainly about saying, let's make sure that we create opportunities for everyone to grow wealth.
It's pretty just big picture and philosophical in a way still, but perhaps a cynical view on this. I do think whether it's Kamala or Trump that wins, it's going to be hard either way to kind of right this ship and get the middle class to start winning at the same rate as the top earners. One method is you just greatly raise the taxes on the top people, but then to Stephanie Ruhle's question there, well, if you raise all the taxes too high, companies can just leave. But then the other thing, just with AI, how there probably will just be continued automation, more jobs will get automated out of society, probably call center workers, a lot of white collar technology jobs, and a lot of white collar administrative jobs. That probably will raise the wealth gap even more. So it's gonna be hard either way to deal with this problem. And one option, I guess, would be eventually to do a universal basic income. But I used to think, by the way, that was a pretty interesting idea. However, I don't think it's very good anymore, just because number one, OpenAI, the person that runs that, Sam Altman, did some big study and apparently just didn't work. So that's one thing. You got to look at the data. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. The other thing is I think you have a major risk of just incentivizing laziness. And that's, I think that's actually would be so destructive. You got to do a negative income tax or something to keep people working. So if you're working whatever, some minimum wage job, you just get, or a more earned income tax credit or whatever that thing's called. So that's what I would say. But the good follow-up here, but I don't think Stephanie asks it. A good follow-up here would be, okay, you talked about the middle class. Why haven't you done that right now with Biden?
I believe that it is not sufficient, and it should not be our goal to just make sure everyone is working. That should be the baseline. That should be a given. And let's create an economy where people have the ability to buy a home, to start a business, to take
Yeah, see, like that's you got to. This is gonna have. That's gonna be so tough to do, especially in 4 years. Like the lot of places in the world have gotten so distorted.
a nice vacation from time to time, right?
For people who want to buy a home, yes, getting a $25,000.
But again, the best follow up here would be, okay, why haven't you done it right now? Or what's the deal with Biden? Or you could say, why haven't you done it right now? And because you haven't done it, because the economy basically it's been way better lately for rich people, do you disagree with things that Biden is doing? That would be like a great follow up, but it's just putting her in a very tough position. So I'm sure like there was a reason they went to MSNBC and not Fox.
$1,000 kicker would be great, but it's not just affording a home. We don't have enough in this country.
You're absolutely right.
And one of the main problems are regulations and rules, strict rules at a local.
And again, this would be one where if you could say, Kamala goes, you're absolutely right. Here we go. You're already in the government. So you could say like, well, what's going on? What's wrong with like the housing secretary under Biden? Why isn't this thing rolling right now?
Level. How does the federal government cut through all that red tape and get down to, the suburbs of Pittsburgh and say, we're going to have to build some affordable housing here? How do you connect the two?
So you're absolutely right. So across our country, people rightly are concerned about the cost of housing. So it's home ownership, to your point. We need more supply. That is, without any question, part of the solution. Creating more supply under my plan includes creating tax incentives to work with the private sector and home builders. Part of my goal and the plan would be to...
I mean, the thing is, there's no way that Biden wouldn't have been saying similar stuff like this 4 years ago, or even 2 years ago in speeches and stuff. It's tough to, when you're already in government and you're talking about your own plan.
Create 3 million new housing units for rent and for ownership by the end of my first term. It includes also what we must do to cut red tape. You're absolutely right. It takes far too long, and there's too much bureaucracy associated with home building. And I say that as a devout public servant. I know that we have to reduce the red tape and speed up what we need to do around building. And that is going to require working from the federal level with state and local governments. And it's going to be different in different places, depending on the needs of that community, the needs of that local government, that municipality, but working in consultation and coordination, and also around incentives that we can create. For example, some of the work is going to be through what we do in terms of giving benefits and assistance to state and local governments around transit dollars, and looking holistically at the connection between that and housing, and looking holistically at the incentives we in the federal government can create for local and state governments to actually engage in planning in a holistic manner that includes prioritizing affordable housing for working people.
Then let me ask you a business that matters a lot to this.
I mean, it's essentially a softball question if you're not going to kind of follow up on specifics. So the answer was fine. It's just that it's pretty easy to just say we're going to build more houses and we're going to work with state and local governments and we're going to provide tax incentives. Like that's not a very difficult answer.
Town.
Yeah.
U.S. Steel.
Yes.
Right? When you think Pennsylvania, when you think Pittsburgh, you got the Liberty Bell in Philly, and you got U.S. Steel in Pittsburgh.
That's right.
And you got
a Japanese
Pittsburgh Penguins and the Philadelphia Flyers.
Company wants to buy them. You are opposed to this idea. Many people.
I thought it was Chinese, Japanese.
Are, but if the deal doesn't go through, they have said people could lose jobs. They could close mills. They could leave the state of Pennsylvania. I mean, that is like moving the Liberty Bell to Newark. So which is more important?
It's most important that we maintain America's ability to have American manufacturing of steel by American workers for a number of reasons, which includes, again, back to the point of growing our economy and how I think about the economy overall, investing in new industries. There is not a new industry that I can imagine that is not going to require steel as a manufacturing of steel as a fundamental part of what it accomplishes. And having American workers in an American company.
I mean, I think you could say 50 years ago. I don't think you can say that anymore. I guess for like the headquarters of a building, but I would not say that Google's main priority is dealing with getting steel.
Manufacturing that steel for those new industries is going to be critically important, not only in terms of our economy, but also in the context of national security. Most people now realize if we didn't before the pandemic and the strain on supply chains and an over-reliance on foreign manufacturing, that we have to be intentional about U.S.-based manufacturing. And of the products that we have to prioritize, steel is one of them. And that's always going to be my priority.
Steel workers matter in this country. Unions matter.
Yes.
In 2016, Donald Trump connected with unions. He saw them. There was an emotional connection. But what he didn't do was deliver policy. In the last 4 years.
Yeah, very fair journalist here. That's funny. This would be like Sean. I think this woman. I didn't look it up, but I think she would consider her like a journalist, right? Like that's like a Sean Hannity level of bias.
We have seen huge wins in this country for unions, but not all unions have gotten behind you. I want to understand, when the Teamsters decided not to endorse you, what was their reasoning? What are they looking for?
Well, let me go back to our just previous conversation. I'm very proud to have the endorsement of the steelworkers and almost every other major union in America, because I stand by workers and I stand by the importance of being able to join a union and to understand the benefit and the value of unions. And I understand the importance of investing in new industries and working actively with the private sector to grow our economy.
But I'm asking.
So one thing I would say, just the difference, this interview is quite boring, which that's fine, but that's just a comment I have, that there's not that much going on here. These are pretty like, these are almost as vanilla of answers as you can give to a lot of these questions.
Because there's this idea, we want something more from her. What is it?
Well, here's the thing, that back to your point about previous election cycles, Donald Trump made a whole lot of promises that he did not meet, and one would argue broke. Look at Lordstown. He said he was going to...
Don't sell your homes.
Yeah, don't sell your homes. And what happened? It shut down. Outsourcing under Donald Trump. His policies that are about...
This is smart for her to do. This is why, and this is now getting a little bit more interesting again. This is why she should do interviews. This is a good point. Even if it's not true broadly, if it's just true in little pockets, it breaks the narrative that Trump has, that he cares the most about middle America and that he's the politician that's going to like protect all their jobs and put tariffs on everybody else if they're trying to rip off America. Donald Trump by far has that group of people. He has that narrative, and like you barely ever hear Democrats even talk like this.
About putting, tens to hundreds of % tariffs.
John Deere.
Yes. So part of the challenge, and I don't disagree that it's a challenge, got to earn the...
I don't mind the tariff stuff. Like there's obviously there's a line, but I just feel like a lot of it is just a negotiation from Trump. He keeps everyone on their toes with stuff like that. I don't mind all the tariff talk.
Vote of everybody is reminding people of fact, regardless of what somebody says in a small rally somewhere. And I think that's really important. And that's part of what I'm doing in this campaign, is to remind people, just like here in Pittsburgh, of the
again, the reason I would say the general reason I don't mind the tariff talk is because there is more. Like you would argue that, there's more free trade, there's more comparative advantages, countries trade with each other, everybody wins, because that would, in theory, make the economic pie go bigger. There's more to running a country and running an economy than just growing the economic pie. You could argue it's probably I would say it probably is the most important thing, but not if it just accrues the money to the top and hollows out the middle of towns. You got to make a decision there. There is a trade-off. You can't just grow and then eventually be like, oh, here's here's a little bit of UBI, but you're out of a job and you're like so depressed that you're gonna get addicted to a drug. That's been happening, stories like that. So that's why I just think like just being ultimate free trade at 100%. The world doesn't really need these developed countries have to manage that now. It's not good for everybody to just have that position on everything, like a total libertarian free market position. I don't think is just default correct every time.
Reality of who has stood with union labor, who stands for American manufacturing, who stands for American jobs.
Can I ask you about tariffs? Because you just mentioned it. It's not just with one company. Donald Trump's sort of big idea is this broad-based tariffs across the board. You and many others have said that would be not.
I don't think he would do that, though. He talked about tariffs all the time. In his 2016, he put some tariffs on, but he didn't just blow up the economy with tariffs.
Only disastrous, but it would be a direct tax on the American consumer.
It would be a sales tax on the American people. That the independent economists have already measured this by his.
Nothing works like that, though. Like, you don't go in and you start at a position. Like, if you want to get a little bit of change, you're not the way he negotiates. It's been basically proven. You start at a position that's like pretty extreme, then you come to the middle. So his rhetoric bothers me when it comes to like his "I hate Taylor Swift" tweet. That bothered me, but like I think he has a pretty good track record now of being a little bit extreme on some of these policies, and then he negotiates them into a more of a middle ground.
The sales tax of doing a 20% tariffs on all imports that he has described would be a 20% sales tax, in essence, on basic necessities for the average American worker, average American family.
Almost like the amount of inflation that you have a theoretical thing that's most likely a negotiating chip, or you have the actual inflation that was caused by Biden and Harris that's like not debatable and happened, and they'd be lucky if it was only 20% total over the 3 3/4 years. 2023, maybe 20, like the total inflation number is very high.
Totaling almost $4,000 a year. That is no small matter. Here in Pittsburgh, when I'm talking to a group of folks who work here, who live here, and when they hear it might be $4,000 more a year for them, look, people can't afford that.
But tariffs aren't unique to President Trump. President Biden has tariffs in place. He's actually looking to potentially implement more. Where do you come out on? Is there a good tariff, a bad tariff?
Well, part of it is you don't just throw around the idea of just tariffs across the board, and that's part of the problem with Donald Trump. Frankly,
I don't agree. I think that's actually part of one of his positive points is he's willing to push it, and he's willing to say to like other countries, you can't do this. Or even if I use, they call it like the bully pulpit, like my big voice because I'm the president. I'm going to negotiate like this. And that's like the biggest risk. Like there's a huge risk in just being chill. This is almost like the Democratic ethos lately. No one touch anything. No one gets fired. Nothing, like just don't wreck anything. We'll just keep printing money. We'll keep adding to the deficit. We'll keep going into more debt, but no one mess up anything. And there's massive risk in that because that ends up being risky. For like, it leads to potentially conflict because you're seen as like a softer country. There's a lot of rabbit holes you can go down, but there is a big risk to just thinking you can keep the status quo. Life doesn't work like that, especially not in politics when you're the biggest country and the most powerful country on earth, and there's all these moving pieces. You got to be dynamic.
And I say this in all sincerity, he's just not very serious about how he thinks about some of these issues. And one must be serious and have a plan.
A plan.
And a real plan that's not just about some talking point ending in an exclamation at a political rally, but actually putting the thought in.
And the other thing with politics, when this is more common on the Democratic side, they come up with some plan where it's like, oh, when I get in, I'm going to do these 10 things. It doesn't work like that. The U.S. government has so many checks and balances. You got to work with the Republicans. You got to work with the Senate, the House. It doesn't go like that. You got to just make these massive trade-offs. You want that, you want that. To come in and just say, we're doing this, these 10 things. Then you go back. Did Trump get to do that? No. Did Biden? No. Did Clinton? No. Did Bush? No. It doesn't work like that. So you need to like have a plan, but we have this detailed plan and it's going to work, all these things, and his is just too out there. I don't know. Not buying it.
Into what will be the return on the investment, what will be the economic impact.
Like, you can't measure that though. When you get in office, people aren't just going to immediately knee-jerk do all that stuff.
On everyday people. And when you look at my plans, you will see what those benefits will be. $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. You know what that means? Then you're creating the ability of that working person to build interest.
Because again, as a good sort of follow-up to what I said, if these plans were all so easy to implement, you would do them right now. You're the vice president right now. Biden's the president right now. He endorsed you. If this is your plan, you could just go tomorrow and do it. It makes the point of what I'm saying. It doesn't work like this. It's not like just, bing, plan's done. Donald Trump's way more realistic when he talks about negotiating. I would even say this. This is going to be probably unpopular with some people. When he says, I have concepts of a plan, that's actually not a stupid statement. It's just more realistic. You don't need to make a plan. You need to have like the framework of a plan. And then you get in there and deal with it.
Intergenerational wealth. Doing the work of a $6,000 child tax credit. Doing the work of a $50,000 tax deduction for first-time small businesses, startups, because right now...
That's a real plan.
It's a real plan, because right now, and again, it's about paying attention to the detail and being serious about it. I'm serious about, and for small businesses and my belief in what they will do as part of America's economic engine.
On Friday,
No.
Then do it right now.
So looking at the fact that right now the tax deduction is $5,000, nobody in this year of our Lord 2024 can start a small business with $5,000. Very few can.
Can though. You can start a lot of just little one-person technology companies. You can sell stuff online. I don't know. You probably actually can do that more right now than any time in history. Like there's massive problems in the economy, but probably the ability to start a company on less than $5,000 inflation adjusted, it's got to be right now is the best time in history to do that, I would say. There's so much leverage with the internet. Maybe you could say 3 years ago is better, 5 years ago, but anytime in the internet era.
So extending it to $50,000 tax deduction for startups to generate the innovation and the ambition of the ideas that are present and among us, but need the fuel to be able to actually achieve the goal.
His plan is not serious when you lay it out like that, but a serious problem over the last few years has been inflation. Luckily,
unbiased though, right? Unbiased.
It's cooling, but prices are still high.
Yeah, I agree with you.
You've said you want to take this on by going after those who engage in price gouging.
Yeah.
But as somebody who supports free markets, who's a capitalist, how do you go after price gouging without implementing price controls? Because once we get in this zone, people start to get worried and they say, I don't know what she stands for.
So just to be very frank, I am never going to apologize for going after companies and corporations that take advantage of the desperation of the American people. And as Attorney General, I saw this happen. In the midst of an emergency, whether it be an extreme weather event or even the pandemic, we saw it, where those few companies, not the majority, not most, but those few companies that would take advantage of the desperation of people and jack up prices.
Name them though. Who does this? Who did this? So many companies don't operate in a place where they're a monopoly. Basically, most companies, I mean, you could argue some of them have like sort of this oligopoly type structure where there's like 4 major players that actually ends up happening in a decent amount of industries, but a lot of companies don't have this massive profit margin. The massive profit margin are in technology companies. Like, and you could maybe say that Microsoft has like unfair competitive practices when they bundle products together, like Microsoft Teams, but I don't know who's price gouging. Name them, because it's not very clear who would be price gouging. Grocery stores, as an example, have like 1 to 3% profit margins. They're not really. I'd say it'd be very hard to argue that that's a price gouging.
Says, yeah, I'm going to go after them. Yes, I'm going to go after them.
Who though? This is just like seems like such a virtue signal.
And that is part of a much more comprehensive plan on what we can do to bring down the cost of living, including housing, including the everyday needs of the American people.
On Friday, you are going.
It'd be nice to know at some level who that is. Who's the price gouging? Because people don't even understand who that could possibly be. Is it credit card companies offering like just that it take advantage of high credit card rates? That's probably an argument that people could get behind. Trump actually made that, but just, in my opinion, you got to say at least an industry or a thought of who it is. You don't got to name like an individual person, but I don't know.
Going to the border. Immigration is complicated. One of the issues is an economic one. And no one is eating cats and dogs in Springfield, Ohio, and I'm glad not to be talking about that. But there are people there that are stressed, that feel that they're at capacity. Communities around the country that have legal immigration, many have said, we're at capacity. And many feel like the government has said to them, well, adapt, sit down, be quiet. This is how it is. What would a Harris administration do for those communities who've taken in many, many legal immigrants but are at capacity?
Well, first of all,
that's a good question.
We do have a
this interview just about over, but that's a good question.
Broken immigration system, and it needs to be fixed. And if we take a step back, months ago, some of the most conservative members of the United States Congress came together with others, proposed a border security bill that would have put 1,500 new border agents on the border to help those hardworking border agents who are there right now working around the clock. Would have put more money into stemming the flow of fentanyl, which is killing Americans around our country and devastating communities. Would have put more resources into our ability to prosecute transnational criminal organizations, which in my career I've prosecuted. Donald Trump got word of the bill, realized it was going to fix a problem he wanted to run on, and told them to kill the bill, don't put it up for a vote. He killed a bill that would have actually been a solution because he wants.
So this is a good answer by Kamala. Taking like I'm not that familiar with the politics around of what happened. Like I wasn't following politics at that moment, but it is a good answer just as like a rebuttal to what she said. Again, maybe it's half true, I don't know, but
to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And that's part of what needs to be addressed. And my pledge is that when elected president, if the American people will have me, I will bring that bill back and I will sign it into law. And we need a comprehensive plan that includes what we need to do to fortify not only our border, but deal with the.
I'm glad she said that, because I was just about to say, just say you want the wall. Like the whole concept that the wall, there's those compilations of, oh, the wall is racist. You just need it right now. Just suck it up. Life is not all like a freaking Disney movie. Just make the wall. And I would say, if I was like an American politician, I would say, we're building this wall, and hopefully in like 20, 30 years, we'll just take it down, because Mexico's thriving so much, other countries are thriving so much that they all have like their own, or they don't even want to come here. They're just prosperity kind of all over. There's not just this massive amount of people that want to come into America and get like kind of take advantage of our strong economy and all of our resources. I would just say that like this thing doesn't need to be up forever, but you just need it right now. And it's not, and the people will be, oh, well, most people that are here illegally overstay visas. It's not going to solve everything, or people will just climb the wall. Most people that come to that wall are not going to be like very athletic rock climbers that can just easily, that's clearly a huge wall is going to stop so many people, and it's going to make this issue so much better. So I don't know why. Like, I know why, because you think it's going to make you sound bad, and because Trump made it his big thing. But that's definitely, I would just say that. I'd be like, we just need it right now, and whatever.
The fact that we also need to create pathways for people to earn citizenship.
Then I want to just ask you about a little job and a big job.
Okay.
The first one, just a fact check.
Okay.
Because your opponent
There is
almost
no little
every
job.
day. Okay.
There's no such thing as a little job.
Okay, fair. Because your opponent almost every day seems to be talking about this. So I just want to ask you yes or no. At any point in your life, have you served 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun, working at a McDonald's? Yes or no? That's it.
I have.
Okay, now the other job. But
it was not a small job. Like, I did the fries. I mean, yes,
Okay,
but I did.
That's actually funny, because Trump was saying like there's no record of her or something at McDonald's, so it's pretty funny.
Period of time. But then let me ask about a big job.
But to your point, if you don't mind, before you get to the big job, there's a part of the reason I even talk about having worked at McDonald's is because there are people who work at McDonald's in our country who are trying to raise a family. I worked there as a student. I was a kid.
So one thing here I'm noticing that the Stephanie or whatever, she was basically ready to go to another question. Kamala actually was like, hey, well, let's just talk about this for a second. That, at least on its face, makes me think that I'm more inclined to think she actually worked at McDonald's now, because she actually wants to talk about it like that. I don't think someone that just made this up for political points would be like, let's talk about it more. So at least for as a signal, I believe her more now for sure than I did before this interview.
Who work there trying to raise.
To be clear, I at this moment I'd believe her. I don't know why she would lie about that, but if there's proof, but she probably did work at McDonald's.
Raise families and pay rent on that. And I think part of the difference between me and my opponent includes our perspective on the needs of the American people and what our responsibility then is to meet those needs.
Then to the big job. You have laid out.
I mean, shouldn't talk about that much, but still, the fact that she stopped on it. But I don't know. Let me know in the comments. Did Kamala Harris work at McDonald's?
Policy in great detail.
Yeah.
But the economy is an unpredictable beast. And you are running for a job that takes extraordinary instinct and guts.
Yeah.
What's the last time you had to make a gut decision? This here is very prescribed, very controlled.
Yeah. Probably the biggest gut decision I've made most recently is to choose my running mate. Yeah. There were lots of good, incredible candidates. And ultimately, that came down to a gut decision.
I know I'm out of time, but then I just want to ask you.
That was a good answer, too. I'm not a fan of Tim Walz so far. At the very beginning, I was, because I thought this was a relatable guy, finally, that doesn't look like some politician that you've would never meet. At least he kind of talks like a normal person. But as soon as he starts every rally, every picture of him, if you Google Tim Walz, the way he goes out there and he's waving, then I started being like, this is all, it looks fake to me. His waves and his mannerism to the crowd. Watch it, it looks like he's performing, like he's a dancer. He's putting his arms in all these different directions. And then also I noticed he has a major tendency, I think, to do very excessive virtue signaling. So that'd be my take. Again, of the 4 people running right now, the person I'm most impressed with is actually JD Vance lately. He kind of had a rocky start, but he's pretty good in these interviews. Yeah.
Question.
And why don't they let Tim Walz do more interviews? I'm not sure they're that thrilled with the pick. Maybe they are. Maybe that's their strategy to just not do that many. But I hardly ever see Tim Walz on these shows.
From my gut.
Okay.
Because today we're talking about we're talking about the economy.
Yeah.
And people don't think often about reproductive rights being an economic issue, but it is. A woman's ability.
Everything is, though. You could probably say that about anything.
To plan her future, her education, her life. Today, and in the last few days, Donald Trump keeps talking.
I would say I appreciate that this interview did not focus on abortion and this for that long. Because every interview I've seen with Kamala has 30-50% of the interview is that. So this is good. Most of this is about the economy.
Talking about it and how in overturning Roe v. Wade, he helped women. He protected women. He says they're miserable today. They're poorer today. They're more vulnerable today. He said he will be the...
So that part of Trump's rhetoric, I don't think is helpful. Or like, again, the tariff stuff is a negotiating chip. But the stuff when he says, like the hyperbolic stuff, he says, I'm the protector of women. I don't understand. I think that's 2016 playbook. I think people are over that. People kind of laughed and gave him benefit of the doubt and was like, wow, this guy's crazy. He says crazy things. I just think in the similar way people are past the peak woke, I think they're past the peak hyperbole style of Trump.
Protector of women if elected. Can you respond to that?
So Donald Trump is also the person who said women should be punished for exercising a decision that they rightly should be able to make about their own body and their future. So I think we would all agree that as a result of that perspective that he has about women, he also then chose 3 members of the United States Supreme Court who did as he intended, undid the protections of Roe v. Wade, and now in state after state, you see laws being passed that do punish women. Laws that, I mean, most recently, a heartbreaking story resulted in a young woman dying, a mother of a 6-year-old. Heart-wrenching stories. And that's for the listener, much less their family. So, look, I think the thing about Donald Trump is that, you know, I don't think the women of America need him to say he's going to protect them. The women of America need him to trust them.
Can we trust you?
Yes.
I don't know if that was a pre-planned line, but that was pretty good. That was a pretty catchy. Don't need to protect them. We need Trump to trust them. Not bad. Pretty good. I'll give that 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10.
Yes. I am not perfect, but I will tell you, I'm always going to put the needs of the people first.
Madam Vice President, thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. That was pretty good. So I'd say the beginning I did not like. The middle, about a quarter of the way through, I think Kamala had a pretty strong set of answers. Again, the beginning, the middle were weak. I think pretty much went weak, strong, weak, strong. That's how I would sum that interview up, but this is probably already a decently long video, so I'll just cut it off there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.